Final thing, what's your final things? I want to talk about your books at the end, but what's your latest expedition? Where are you going, and what are you doing there?
So Alaska, I had this idea about 18 months ago that it would be interesting to do an expedition, particularly in one part of the Arctic that I've not been to yet. I talked earlier before about Greenland being somewhere I spent a lot of my early career, and I don't want to get typecast as just being a Greenland specialist. And of course, Alaska is a very significant part of the Arctic. And because COVID put pay to my last fully big budget expedition, which was also being filmed for a documentary. That was a very exciting time. But of course, it was completely put pay to by COVID. We actually signed the contracts with the sponsors and everything. I think it was 2 weeks before lockdown began. So that was a pretty heartbreaking moment. But I thought, well, in the time that I need to recover from that, try and build that business back up again and try and try and get it refunded, I need to get out onto the ice and do something interesting. And so I found a teammate, James, and we decided that we were going to try and ski the North Slope, which is essentially the huge expanse of open tundra, which covers the top, let's say, the top quarter of Alaska, north of the Brooks Mountain Range. And in a lot of senses, if you look at it, it looks a bit like an ice cap. There's almost no terrain to speak of, apart from just a huge icy landscape covered in actually a relatively thin layer of snow. It's normally only about a foot deep on top of the tundra. And so the plan is to ski all the way from the east to the west. And if that's done, we don't believe anyone has done that in such a sort of a pure form. Of course, there are hundreds and thousands of native Alaskans, and in fact, their ancestors who went across into Canada and Greenland, who will have traveled on that land. But in terms of doing an unsupported crossing from one side to the other without stopping to build camps and villages and to hunt and fish locally, we're simply trying to do an athletic challenge moving from one side to the other. It should be quite unusual and quite novel. And it's a particularly cold part of the Arctic, which is strange because if you look at Alaska on the map, compared to some parts of the Arctic, it's not that far north. In fact, the Arctic Circle is only roughly in across the center of Alaska. But because you do get cold air patterns where it simply sits, not static, but it sort of sits on top of that large expanse of land, you do get cold air just staying put. And so that's why you get temperatures down approaching minus 50. And that's not including wind chill. That's genuine air temperature approaching minus 50. But we're going to be hoping
break your record then,
to have some temperatures in the minus 20s and 30s too.
Yeah.
That would break my record. I'm not sure how keen I am to keep on breaking this record, because now for successive years, I've now managed to break my coldest temperature record. And although it sounds very impressive, frankly, I'm perfectly happy with minus 47, and I would be deeply, deeply grateful if the Arctic gave me lots of minus 30, minus 35 through this winter coming up.
Your books, you've got 3 narrative books and 1 photo book, and they're available. I'm just going to drop a screen over the top just to show you where the books are available from, but pretty much everywhere. Are they audio books as well, the 3 narrative ones?
They're not. I was with a small publisher, and the resources that go into doing audiobooks are quite significant. And when my first book was published, of course, there were audiobooks, but it wasn't the huge behemoth of an industry that we now see. And so I sort of missed the boat a little bit for those first 3. But I'm absolutely sure that the next one, as and when that happens, will be in audiobook form, because I know that a lot of people like to absorb my offerings when they're walking around or going running or on the train or something like that. And some people simply prefer to listen to, probably not prefer to listen to me, whichever very talented voiceover artist we managed to get. Maybe Stephen Fry, if I think Stephen Fry does almost every voiceover of every book. So yes, that would be nice to do, because it just gives people another way of absorbing what can be obviously quite a long book. And I do tend to get in trouble with editors, because I like to give people value for money, and I give quite substantial manuscripts in and then get told, oh, we need to lose 50,000 words. And of course, that's heartbreaking for an author, because you feel that those 50,000 words are delivering something to the reader.
Also, you can follow Alex's channel, which I mentioned earlier, which is on YouTube, which is at Alex Hibbert Originals. Again, I'll drop the link down in the description for you. Some fantastic, he narrates all of it, amazing adventures. There's some incredible things you do with bits of equipment to fix things when things go wrong, which is just incredible.
Well, that really is the nature of traveling. That really is the nature of traveling unsupported. You've really got to fix everything as you go along, and it's the real difference, I think, between people who have sort of experienced the cold against people who have travelled for multiple days, multiple weeks in the cold, because you can be a little bit more blasé if you live in a cold part of the world and you're driving to work in a heated truck. You then go into a heated building. If you are a bit careless and you break something, you can just go and replace it. Whereas there's a real impetus that when you're on an expedition or when you're somewhere remote, you've just got to look after absolutely everything. And you've got to be quite inventive sometimes to fix stuff. You're quite right.
Do you want to shout out any of your other social media channels or anything else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I try and do a few different channels for different reasons, and some have worked better for me than others. I've never quite understood, I'll be honest, I've never quite understood Instagram, and so I've slightly dialed down the effort that I've made on it over the last few years. Twitter, I was quite an early adopter, and that's where I talk about a whole range of things, not including the Arctic. Although that again is on a slight hiatus at the moment as I try and work out what direction that platform is going to go in as to whether I want to really invest a great deal more time in it. YouTube, as you say, I've got the Originals channel, which is mostly my expedition videos, but also the development of Alan, the orange lifeboat, that's going to be front and center of my next big Arctic expedition. And then I also have a smaller channel on YouTube, which I'm trying to build at the moment, called Arguably, which is where I have either monologues or discussions about things that I find important and perhaps slightly not controversial for the sake of it, but things I think should be discussed. I've then also, in the last 6 weeks, opened a TikTok account, and I am still yet to be convinced. We will see what happens with that one.
Be convinced. It's a very powerful channel, and the demographic is not where you think it is. Thank you, Alex. That's been absolutely outstanding interview you've given us. Some great insights, a lot of fun, and good luck in your next adventure, my friend.
Thank you very much. It was really, really nice talking to you. And I hope people found what I had to say interesting, or at least gives them some food for thought and maybe some inspiration for some further reading.